Okay.
You need me to just come get me?
Oh, Governor Florio, good morning. Nice to see you.
Good morning to everyone.
Yeah, looks like you're in your office today.
I am in my office today.
Yeah, good.
Schedule's Friday.
And I see Jay is on and 46 others. So why don't we get started? And they'll join in when they realize that it's 10 o'clock. So good morning, all. This is a function of the Transportation and Aviation Committee that is one of our most active committees within the organization. And you could see on the screen our co-chairs, and we need 4 because we have a lot of issues. One of the very basic issues of this organization has always been transportation. So that's why you see 4 illustrious names. Some are on, and I know Jen is here, Jen Grenier from WSP USA, Bill Brooks, STV, Rich Hortzman, KS Engineers, Gary Holfish, HNTB. So they are your co-chairs should you want to reach out to them directly for anything that you may have an interest in. These programs do not exist, without the support of our sponsors. And let me say a big thank you to both VRH Design Build, Jim Sylvester, and I don't know that I see Jim yet, and also French Perillo Associates, and Dave Cownan is here with us. Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Jim. Dave, I won't do any long introductions. You're on our board. You know us well. You've been with us for quite a while. We thank you for your work on behalf of the Development Council and certainly South Jersey. And I'd like you to take it from here and introduce our guest speaker, Assemblyman Moen.
Thanks, Marlene. Good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to represent French and Perillo Associates today. We're a multidiscipline engineering and environmental services firm located in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and Georgia. And with a regional office in the DRPA building. Matter of fact, we share a wall with Senator Booker. And our regional office is headed by Matt Kearney, who some of you may know. I've had the pleasure of serving for the past 6 years as the co-chair of the annual construction forecast event, which we are currently planning to host in June in one form or another. We'll just have to see how this pandemic pans out. A little note, I strongly believe that transportation infrastructure is going to be a significant component of the economic recovery that we need as a result of this pandemic, not just for Southern New Jersey region, but for the whole nation. So with that, I'd like to introduce Assemblyman Bill Moen. He was elected to New Jersey General Assembly in November 2019, becoming the youngest member of both houses of the state legislature. He represents New Jersey's 5th legislative district, which includes parts of both Camden and Gloucester counties, and currently serves on the Commerce and Economic Development, State and Local Government, and Transportation and Independent Authorities committees. Prior to his service in the State House, Assemblyman Moen served as an elected member of the Camden County Board of Commissioners and as New Jersey State Director for South Jersey State Director for U.S. Senator Cory Booker. Assemblyman Moen has dedicated his time to modernizing county government and tackling issues of importance to the community. Bill has worked to expand care to veterans while finding innovative ways to honor their service, such as revamping the Camden County Veterans Cemetery at Harley, establishing a partnership with the Library of Congress to make Camden County only one of 2 county governments to preserve the stories and memories of local veterans, implementing the County Purple Heart Parking Space Program, creating the Camden County Gold Star Parent ID Card Program, and forming the committee tasked with celebrating the county's 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War. A first-generation college graduate, Bill earned a Master of Public Administration from the University of Pennsylvania's Fels School of Government and a bachelor's degree in political science from Rowan University. On a personal note, Bill married Nicole in this past year in Newport, Rhode Island, which happens to be where my wife and I dated when I was working at the University of Rhode Island. So there's a link there, and the URI is just across the bay from Newport, rather. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Assemblyman Bill Moen. Bill?
Thank you, Dave, and thank you for that very kind introduction. I would like to give you credit. I would like to be able to say that you were our inspiration for choosing Newport from our conversations, but we found that city to be a place we love, and there's so much really to take away from a city like that, to bring different aspects of their culture, I think, to our region, and it's something I keep in the back of my mind. I do want to just begin by thanking Marlene and the team at the Development Council for this opportunity. For those that I have met and developed relationships with, good to see you on the call. I'm glad that one silver lining in the COVID stay-at-home Zoom era is that we don't have to go out, and some of us didn't have to go out today and brave through the weather that we're encountering. And it's my hope that everyone's prepared for next week's potential snowstorm. I also want to thank the sponsors, and I understand just from my previous work in different positions how important organizations like this are, and how the sponsors really play a key role in the functioning of these organizations. So thank you for that. Just very briefly, and I know that Marlene would like to make sure we have the opportunity to touch base with some questions towards the end from you all. I would like to just give a very brief overview of really the genesis, I think, for the presentation, but also just my experience in the first year in the state legislature. When I was elected in 2019, I really sought to find a space on the committee, the Transportation Committee in the State Assembly. And for me, besides it being just a general interest of my own, I know how important the issue of transportation is to the district that I represent, dating all the way back to when Jim Florio served in Trenton in the legislature. And from there on out, if you think of the figures that played key roles in transportation for the region, names come to mind such as Walter Rand, even as we move forward, Joe Roberts and Don Norcross when he was in the state Senate, Patricia Egan Jones. So there's a long line of people that I believe really kept this in the forefront of their minds, and really are responsible for where we are today in the southern half of the state and what transportation options there are. So that's where, for me, my decision was to pursue that position on the Transportation Committee. So now, beginning with in January of 2020, I was named the only Southern New Jersey member of the State Assembly Transportation Committee from either party. And so what I really sought out to do based on those factors was to really begin to take on a listening tour. Now you can imagine in January of 2020, that seemed to be much more intensive in connecting and visiting and being able to get out there and see some of the projects that are happening around the state. As COVID hit, much of that focus and plan really turned to Zoom meetings. And so one of the things that we did through my office was to really connect with the stakeholders in each of the municipalities to understand their transportation needs, and then allowing me to then relay that back to the committee in Trenton, and also in our conversations with the Murphy administration throughout the course of the year. And so one of the first steps we took in the office was to really break apart the 5th District and focus on certain corridors. And so for the first part of the year of last year, we began to meet with the mayors of the municipalities that run along the Black Horse Pike. And I just want to very briefly read to you the takeaways that we saw or heard from each of these municipalities. And let me just say that this is where we started, but we intend to do the same for the rest of the district and frankly for the rest of South Jersey. But the biggest takeaways that I think truly overlapped between the municipalities, and for those that are in the transportation world, I'm sure you've heard this in different ways throughout the years. We looked at this as a good way to connect with the municipalities and hear them out. So the biggest takeaways were the congestion that occurs on the Black Horse Pike and the need for more commercial development that would tie into some of the perhaps improved transportation alternatives, better parking areas. That was something that came up when you think about some of the changes that had occurred to the Black Horse Pike over the last 20 years and the parking that perhaps in a town like Runnymede, which is my hometown, once had on the Pike that they no longer have, and then how that impacts the small businesses that may choose to relocate and call Runnymede, specifically the Black Horse Pike corridor, home. And then finally, just I think as really a summary, a better traffic flow to relieve the congestion on the Black Horse Pike. And I'll touch base on that later down the road in the presentation. But I did just want to give you an idea. That's really where we started in looking for some of the opinions and the priorities of some of the local officials and municipalities and transportation experts in the district and around South Jersey. So that's I think with a broad brush, the overview and introduction. And so with the presentation, I would just mention that I'm sure many of you are aware of these aspects. What I hope to do in this presentation, and with the respect of time for each of you and your schedules, I will run through this pretty quickly, which will allow us to then perhaps have some time to chat through some question and answers. So if I can ask for the next slide, please. So we'll talk first about the Direct Connect project. I think most of you are well aware of this. If you live anywhere, I would say in a 50-mile radius of the Direct Connect project, you've probably encountered it. I can tell you that I was a graduate student at Penn when I was at the groundbreaking when Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno came down to initiate the project. And that was over 10 years ago, I believe, at this point. And so with having family that lived in Belmar, my father grew up in Belmar. I now live in the borough of Belmar. I see this almost every day, the changes, the developments that are occurring. So it's been very important to me, and we've heard from constituents to remain updated on what the DOT, the state DOT, is doing day by day. And so this is just a map, a regional map, an understanding of where we're talking about in South Jersey for the Direct Connect project. We can move to the next slide. This is more of a zoomed in map, if you will, which points out some of the landmarks within the area and some of the perhaps some of the issues that may have been encountered by the engineers and the construction officials that are working on the project. We can move to the next slide. So I think many of you have probably at least have been updated at one point or another on the process. What was most astonishing to me, and I mentioned this to the DOT the last time we talked on this, was looking at that final contract and the anticipated completion date, which is now 2028. So if you do the math, we're looking at a project that really runs the course of 18 years. So you could have a child who was born and entered adulthood in the period of time that this project is taking to complete. And I look at that as, while it may be an inconvenience for many of the residents in the area, I think the impact I think it will have in the long term for some of the alleviation in the area will be something that's truly recognized and appreciated. So this is just a timeline. Right now, the darker bullet points are where we are in terms of pending projects or not yet initiated or future projects. So I don't want to have to run through what's on the slide. So if you take a look, just to give you some dates of what we're we're working with here. So we can move to the next slide. So I do want to go through contract 3 and 4 to just provide quick updates. So this will focus on the northbound and southbound 295 bridges. So if you're traveling in that area now, you can actually see some of the work that's being done on the right-hand side of Route 42 if you're going north on Benigno Boulevard, that area, as well as over by where the Curaleaf site is, which is off of Creek Road in Belmar. You're starting to see the work that's being done to really, I think, set this up for contract 3 and 4. So the southbound will open with 2 lanes. The Aljo curve changes will change from the Aljo curve to a southbound ramp to Route 42. There's going to be a temporary bridge on Browning Road in Belmar that's built to accommodate some of the changes. There's 10 retaining walls that will be built and 4 noise walls that will be built. So that's contract 3. Again, the anticipated completion for this is between December of 2024 and May of 2025. We can move to the next slide. So contract 4 will complete Route 76 and the Route 42 connection. There's a new ramp that will eliminate the existing left-hand exit that exists currently on 676. The new 295 northbound lanes will open and the express lanes will be eliminated, which are there now. 295 southbound to Route 42 southbound will be covered roadway when that opens. And again, this will be, the aspect of this will be removing the Aljo curve. And so if you're looking at this, this is the project that the expectation when all is said and done will be completed in 2028. So that is the direct connect aspect of it. We are very well aware of these updates and enjoy a very good working relationship with the Department of Transportation on receiving, not just receiving information from them, but also conveying some concerns from the community that is specifically impacted in that area. We can move to the next slide, please. Hand in hand with that is the Missing Moves project, which this is, again, just an overview of a bird's eye view of the project, which fits in with the Direct Connect project. We can move to the next slide. This is just a little closer of a view, and I wish we were having this in person. I would probably have a laser pointer to help connect some of the things I'm saying to specific areas of the map here. I think it's important to see that there's 2 ramps that are being completed. There's one that's running from Route 42 north that will then connect to 295 southbound. If you're looking at this map here, that is on the right-hand side where the yellow roadway is, which is Route 42. That red line that runs diagonally over to the yellow line over to the left, that is would be the connecting ramps from the 42 north to the 295 south. And then as you can see, we want the reversal will be occurring. So you'll see from the left-hand side, you'll see where the ramp will be built from 295 north to Route 42 south. That will be, if you're picturing Belmar, that will be the ramp that runs around the neighborhood where the Curaleaf Center is now. So we've had some in-depth conversations with the DOT to make sure that there are some considerations made for the businesses in that area and also some of the residential properties. In addition, that is, as you all probably very well know, that is a huge redevelopment space that we want to make sure whatever is completed in that space becomes a part of what will be to come of that larger development space that runs right along the coast of the Big Timber Creek there. So that is really the waterway that separates that area of Belmar to Deptford Township. Deptford Township on the south side of that waterway. Next slide, please. So this is the overview for those missing moves completion projects. So South State received the project award in 2020, $180 million. We would expect that the completion will be in 2024. And then at the bottom of the slide here, you can see some of the work that has begun and some of the piling that has been driven into some of the area around that roadway. We can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so now we're shifting from the direct connect to some of the updates that we've received for the New Jersey Turnpike. For those that have kept a close eye on this, as we've seen over the last few years, there's been widening projects that have lane widening projects that have occurred in other areas of the state. I think from my perspective, most notably in central Jersey. This is a project that we anticipate will be a very important aspect of some of the, I think, space, I should say the economy and the ability to move, you know, certain products along the way. I think this is a really key piece to the long term as we look at seeing some of the development with our ports, particularly in Paulsboro and in Gloucester County. I think this is a key piece to this. And let me just say that the widening, the turnpike widening is, it's exits 1 through 4, but for the purposes of this conversation, for the purposes of my legislative district, we wanted to focus on really the widening that's going to occur between exits 2 and 4. So this slide is really showing you the work that's being done from exits 2 to 3, which 2 to 3 would run, for those familiar, from Woolwich Township at exit 2 to Runnymede at exit 3. It's 13 miles and 24 bridges will be widened or reopened because of this widening project. We can move to the next slide. And then this is just simply the overview of exits 3 to exit 4, the widening that will occur from Runnymede to Mount Laurel, which is 9 miles, and 11 bridges will need to be replaced or widened. I will mention here that one of the, and this is through the work of with my staff and my colleagues in the 5th District. When I go back to the beginning of the presentation where I talked about some of the conversations that we were having with key officials in the municipalities, when you start to think about how congestion on the Black Horse Pike and more commercial development, better traffic flow, how this all works in. One of the things that I'm taking up, and we're really working with the community, is to provide some input as the Turnpike begins their work, their public hearings on the widening, to really make sure that they're using the opportunity to perhaps consider providing other alternatives for the exits that currently exist for exits 2, 3, and even 4. For my focus in my district, that would be exit 3. And so when you think about where that exit lets off onto the Black Horse Pike, and then you pair that with the concerns we're hearing from the community, I think we have a really great opportunity to use this time where the Turnpike is beginning this work to try to find out if there would be a better opportunity that would serve the residents of that area by creating an alternative exit, which I think will go hand in hand with some of the quality of life issues that you know, most communities in the state have or would expect from their government leaders. So that's something I will be making a priority of mine in the coming years, is to make sure that we are fully thinking through that. And let me just mention that the Turnpike has been a great partner in the conversations that we're having on these issues. And I do want to just mention that as we move forward. Next slide, please. I'm sure many of you have read recently about the Glassboro-Camden rail line and some of the updates. I will not go too in depth on this, but just wanted to put the map in this this slide to give everyone an idea of where it will run. Some of the, I think, the more recent news, and I think I saw that Mike Sullivan from SJTA is on the call. We want to thank him for providing some of this information, but it's good to see that SJTA is slated to supplement $25 million worth of design work for the GCL, the Glassboro-Camden line. We are, for those that have not followed this closely, in the fall, the DRPA had initiated the environmental impact study and the hearings that occurred. I testified, or I should say I left public comment in support of the rail line. And I'll just say very simply, growing up in Runnymede, going to school at Rowan University, working in Woodbury at the Woodbury Police Department when I was in college, going to graduate school at the University of Pennsylvania, and living for 6 years in Camden City. I've pretty much lived a good portion of my life along this line, and I'm somebody I think that could absolutely see the benefit to this kind of project taking place. And so we will be working to ensure that these community partners and some of the authorities and entities that are taking the lead on this have the support of the legislative delegation. As you know, the Senate President has spoken very highly of this, and I think it's something that we see from whether it's the SJTA or the DRPA. There is a commitment to trying to row in the same direction on this and make sure in this Biden administration that there is an opportunity to perhaps find some federal funds that could help in different aspects, while also utilizing some of the state funds that may have been created through the gas tax and the transportation fund. So I think for the purposes of the presentation, I want to leave it there with the Glassboro-Camden rail line, and happy to answer any questions after that, but we can just move to the next slide. I do want to just touch on a few of these other areas here. So I think one of the silver linings in this COVID pandemic for those that still had to do their commutes was it did force the hand of a lot of our authorities to really consider some of the electronic tolling opportunities that are there. And so we do see that, at least in South Jersey, we see the entities such as the Garden State Parkway, New Jersey Turnpike, the Expressway are all moving towards in a multi-year planning and through their own, their own schedules, all electronic tolling. This will increase better traffic flows. It will allow for safer merges, less bottlenecks. And so the SJTA has conveyed to us that they expect that there will be a toll system integrator contract by June, and they're finishing the final designs. And so that's a positive, I think, bringing our region into the 21st century. I think this is a good step for the commuters of South Jersey. We can move to the next slide, please. When we talk about lane widenings for the Turnpike, I think this is becoming a recurring theme. We see that there is some focus on the South Jersey Transportation Authority and the work they're doing with a hopeful lane widening. I want to show this map here to give you an idea that when you read about in the newspaper about the widening that is expected to occur, the aim, you're really looking at the space between interchanges 31 and 42. So 31, if I know it's small, but directly in the middle of this map is Hamilton exit 28. So 31 is to the northwest of that 28 exit. And so then you would expect that conversation to really revolve around that space there that runs from 31 through Williamstown, Washington Township, and up to Route 42, I should say. I'm sorry, I might have said exit 42, but Route 42. That will, when they talk about widenings, you're going from lanes 2 to 3 in that space. That's currently in the concept development and environmental screening phase. Again, that's information that was relayed to us in our updates in our meetings with the SJTA. We can move to the next slide. Oh, and sorry, I didn't realize that this also was another slide on the widening. So it's just a picture of the work that's to be done, and again, a reiteration that they've begun the concept development and environmental screening. We can move to the next slide. We also heard, again, this is stepping outside of my legislative district, but just as important in the Atlantic City development. The SJTA has relayed that, as the connector tunnel from Atlantic City to Brigantine, as they look to, make some improvements to that structure, they expect LED lighting upgrades to be completed by this summer. And then the SJTA relayed that there's some resurfacing improvements that are expected in the near future there. I will stop there with the projects, and we can move to legislation. Some of these pieces of legislation were ones that came in from the committee, so I'll just speak to a few of them. The first bill would require developers to offer electric vehicle charging stations as an option in new home construction that was signed into law. I think one of the key pieces of that debate was really whether, when you think about new home development, some of the contractors that came to the table, I think the simplest way to say it was, is it the chicken or the egg first? Should the conduit be developed and be required to be developed for these projects if there are no residents that may have electric vehicles residing in those facilities? Or should we be planning for the future and ensuring that this conduit is ran to a place on the facility property and then allow for that to be accommodated? And when I say that, I mean electric vehicles, tenants that may have electric vehicles. Just running through a few other ones here. S938 has passed the Senate in October of last year, and it was voted out of the Assembly Transportation Committee in December of 2020. S3190 is a bill that would allow for the infrastructure bank to help finance aviation and maritime or marine infrastructure projects. This is something in my conversations with Camden City officials. I think that there is a potential to utilize the changes to this that the law would be creating, particularly around some of the marine infrastructure work that the city is expecting to take up. When I say that, I mean, as we look at some of the coastal property, some of the parks that are being developed, and some of the other space along the port area, as well as into North Camden and into Kramer Hill near Petty's Island. I think there's an opportunity to connect that there. And then finally, this was legislation that I've sponsored. It provides for a 3-year pilot program to expand the provision of paratransit services in New Jersey. So DHS and DOT commissioners would be establishing a 3-year plan to expand and enhance access to paratransit services and expand community-based paratransit services in the area of the state that are not served by Access Link. So this would be broken up. Each region of the state would have this pilot program that would be utilized in the region. The Department of Transportation Commissioner would review the applications of organizations that are willing to provide these paratransit services, and the organizations will meet specific qualifications that the DOT puts out. And the goal of the pilot program is to determine the demand for paratransit services in the area and the number of people who benefited from enhanced services and the extent that the region is served by Access Link. So that's something that we're working through now. It's currently in the Assembly Human Services Committee awaiting consideration. And then lastly, I'll just mention that we are working through some language not yet introduced on transit village development. So we would hope to add on to the Transit Village Initiative statute and establish a task force for that specific area, meaning Transit Village. And the task force would then establish a manual of best prices that developers can follow to identify transportation to include mixed-use housing development. The program is similar to the Transit Village Initiative, but it serves as a program for developers and mixed-use housing projects rather than for the municipalities. So it's extending a hand for the developers to just have a better understanding of some of the opportunities that may exist. So again, the goal is really to encourage development that has transit-oriented development features in transit villages. And the last thing I'll say, this wasn't included in the slide because I was just given this information today. Marlene, I'll just mention this and then we can turn to questions. We did hear within the last few days that we expect that there will be a big announcement from the governor's office on the Walter Rand Transportation Center. We expect that there will be a commitment for the renovations to move forward, which, for those that are not aware, the Walter Rand Station is a key piece to the Camden infrastructure, the second busiest station in the state of New Jersey. And it's welcomed news for those that understand how the Camden development in a larger sense is expecting to build out. And so that will be a key piece to that as we look to make sure Camden is in a place to accommodate some of the transportation projects and initiatives that I had mentioned throughout this presentation. So I will stop there. Marlene, I'll turn it back over to you to see if there are any questions. And I would just like to give a shout out to my staff. Samantha Bender's on the call. She's my legislative director. She was very helpful in putting together that transportation presentation. So I do want to thank her for that.
Well, thank you, Bill. You've given us a lot to think about, and I know our engineers who are on are excited to hear what you've given us. Also, the Transportation Committee, I'm sure, has a whole list of legislative agenda items that you just reviewed that we're probably going to have to, that'll, I'm sure, be the subject of the next Transportation Committee meeting. But there are questions coming in. There is one that comes from Mike Wessner. His question is, when it disappeared, is there a timeline proposal for the Glassboro-Camden rail line?
So I have in my notes, I know that one of the key pieces to the line was to really get through that environmental impact study phase that the DRPA had taken up. I think that looking at my notes here, the Glassboro-Camden line project team is working with the DRPA and New Jersey Transit on the final EIS. I don't have the timeline in my notes. I know that there have been some dates that have been kicked around. We'll have to get back to you on that. I don't want to give you the wrong information, but I know that this was obviously something that would be a multi-year project. I would expect, somewhere my own opinion would probably be somewhere between 5 to 10 years.
Just for the information of those on the line, this has been a project of the Development Council since Governor Whitman. So we've been tracking this thing for a lot of years. Recently testified on behalf of the project, wrote letters to the editor, got some smarky responses. It's not popular. Well, it's popular every place, but what I see is 1 or 2. So through the Transportation Committee, we've been on that one for quite a while. So another question, George Lobin is asking, as we build these housings, are we looking at power available versus power needed to provide the electric vehicle charging stations?
That's a very good question. I think through the legislation, there was some back and forth about, I think, the on-site build out. I'd have to go back and look at the legislation to determine if that was touched on. I would hope that, that would be taken into account as the development projects move forward, given this demonstrated need and the expectation of where this is going. I'd have to take a look at the legislation to see if it does cover that, or if it's an expectation that there would be, that would be factored into what's occurring for each of the specific projects that may take place that do include this offering.
Good. Mike Egginton, you want to make a remark about the Walter Rand Institute.
Yeah. Hi, Assemblyman, good to see you, and thanks for your work, in Trenton, your advocacy for South Jersey and on particularly the Assembly Transportation Committee. I just wanted to let you know, I'm sure you're aware that I was recently appointed to be the new chairman of the Walter Rand Institute at Rutgers, Camden. And as you said before, the legacy of Walter Rand, was the father of transportation for South Jersey. I want to make sure that we use that ability of the Institute. The genesis of it was created by Walter Rand in transportation. I want to make sure that we, including the Glassboro Camden line, I was involved over the years back in the early 90s with then Speaker Jack Collins on the Mercer Camden line, that we bring that to the attention of the Institute, and any advocacy we can help through that Institute get back to our core mission of advocating. I'm excited to hear about the Rand Station renovation. So I just kind of want to make that available to you in your efforts, that please bring to our attention anything that we can do to help elevate it, especially in my capacity now as the new chairman.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate those comments, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to mention everyone on the call. If you are familiar with the project and you are supportive, trust me when I say that I think that the DRPA, the SJTA, I would say myself included, would love to hear from you. As Marlene mentioned, there are some efforts underway to derail, no pun intended, the project, and really I think are, as you would expect with some of these larger kinds of projects, there's always going to be another side to it, and so it's important to just make sure we're building out the support to show the regional support that is here for this, and as we're seeing the investments occurring in a place like Glassboro over the last 10 to 15 years, and in a place like Camden for the last couple decades, and the efforts that have, from the state perspective, that have been focused there. This is a key piece. You look at some of the municipalities that are on that line, that while sure there may be some municipalities that aren't in favor of this, but think about some of the other towns that have been supportive of this, like a Gloucester City, a Woodbury City. These are towns that are, in my own opinion, could easily be in the same situation as some of the municipalities that are on the river line, where you jump off the line and you could go have a cup of coffee, you could have a beer, you could have dinner within a block of that line. And those are some of the easier lifts. Think about companies that may be interested in relocating based on that decision. And going back a few years when I was served as a county commissioner, when you talk about a municipality like Gloucester City, there's so many other things that could come from this kind of a development. For those that remember, this is even before my time on this earth. There was a ferry that existed from that area, from National Park, Gloucester City, that area that connected to the Navy Yard. We still hear from residents today in the area that talk about how they would love to see that happen again. And so when you think about this line and what it could mean for a place like Gloucester, that's something that I think of in the back of my mind, the reopening in the long term of a ferry opportunity to get people from South Jersey to Philadelphia or to South Philly to the Navy Yard. These are the opportunities that are created through a project like this.
Right.
I'll just add, I fully agree with you, because I remember years ago, then Speaker Joe Doria invited me up to North Jersey to He showed me where they were building the Hudson-Bergen rail line. And now that when that was completed, it boomed with economic development, with stores, shops, condos, you name it. So the old adage, if you build it, they will come, is certainly true. So we see that nexus between these rail lines and building economic development. But thank you for that.
Thanks, Mike.
More questions. So here's one from John. Any comment on the funding of the Transportation Trust Fund from a traditional motor fuels tax to a mileage-based user fee?
Well, I think this past year, with COVID and stay-at-home orders, I think it does beg to question that consideration. It's not something I've truly put much thought into. I do think that it's an interesting concept. I'm happy to look at that further. But that's, yeah, we've heard that in different ways. I think when you look at perhaps other areas of the country and some of the conversations that have happened in New York City related to some of the taxes that they were considering, and the impact that COVID has had on those considerations. That's something we can look at for sure.
Good, thank you. I'll jump in for a minute. There's so much to talk about, so we're inviting you back now, and maybe even in person, because this is, as I said, one of our more active and larger committees, and there's a lot going on that we'll want to talk to you about. But Bernie Tetral reminds me that the Transportation Committee had previously brought up the idea of expanding the New Jersey Turnpike Interchange 3 to connect with Route 55, and also asked for a study of possible new interchange 2A at Route 45 near Woodbury. This might be an opportunity for these as a part of a widening program. And thanks, Bernie, for reminding us. Bernie's been a longstanding member of the Transportation Committee. So there's a thought. Not that you don't have enough to do, but maybe another interchange.
Well,
No, look, now is the time for that. Now is the time to talk through all of those alternatives for sure.
Yeah, Governor Foria, you had something.
I was just going to share, first of all, I want to congratulate Bill on a nice presentation. But I also wanted to give him something to think about for the long term. The offshore wind initiative is really taking off in New Jersey. New Jersey is going to be the center of this whole development across the nation. Economic development potential out of it is wonderful. South Jersey can benefit directly. Manufacturing companies are now starting to think about moving to New Jersey. For example, in Paulsboro, they're going to have a German company building foundations for the offshore wind facilities. One of the unused resources in New Jersey has been freight short lines. We have a lot in South Jersey. The sense that if we have more manufacturing facilities coming to New Jersey, South Jersey particularly, maximizing the integration of those short lines can do a lot to facilitate movement of things and not have more traffic congestion, benefiting the growth, the jobs, manufacturing opportunities, and the whole offshore wind industry. I mean, this is a big deal. This is a very thing. The Biden administration has signaled its support for this. So New Jersey and the Murphy administration is going to be able to benefit from that. So just something to put in the back of your mind to think about transportation resources. Freight railroads are extremely important for manufacturing.
Great.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Governor.
Yeah, Governor, we have, if you can believe, we have that on our agenda and have had it for quite a while. We are getting more active in the offshore wind port project, but even those short line projects and discussions have come up many times. So we're going to follow through with that. We'd like to get back to some semblance of normalcy so that we can actually get some more things done. But thank you for bringing that up. We're getting close to the end, but Marshall Spivak has a remark and a question. Grateful for your leadership on these important issues for South Jersey, Assemblyman Moen. For years, the Atlantic City Rail Line has struggled pre-COVID, and it's critical to connecting Western and Eastern South Jersey, especially veterans headed to Philly for VA services. What can we all do to be better advocates for improving this important transportation mode for South Jersey?
Thanks, Marshall. In fact, I actually took that line to attend classes at Penn because most folks don't realize where that connects to in Philadelphia, which is a completely different area than the Patco Transit, the Patco Rail connects to more of a center city where the Atlantic City line connects to 30th Street Station in University City in Philadelphia. And let me just say, when the line was shut down I believe it was in 2018, I led the charge on the Camden County Commissioner Board to really advocate to the governor's office to make sure that that was not going to become a common or a permanent decision, and made sure we explained to the governor's office the impact that it had on the region. I think, Marshall, I think from your perspective, which I know you know Atlantic City very well, I do totally agree with your assessment that the veterans community utilizes the line to get to the VA hospital in Philadelphia and to University City. I also think the alternative is true. If anyone, I've done this within the last couple of years, if anybody decided to take that line to Atlantic City in the summer, it can be a key piece for commuters around the region to make it to the Jersey Shore. And I think personally, just from my review of the arrival times, I think that there is some work that can be done to better, I think, coordinate with the demands of our region. For an example, if you were to reside in Atlantic County or Southern Camden County, and you had a job in University City, I think that some of the times on the line are just frankly inconvenient for you to expect to use that as a daily commute alternative. I do also think that there's some, I think we could be doing a better job as a region in advocating for its importance, and I think the long-term expectation of Atlantic City and where we're going there, and how this plays a key role in that. As we move into now we're 21 years into the 21st century, but I do think that some of the other conversations that we're having on the Glassboro-Camden rail line and really ensuring that there is a more energy efficient transportation alternative that's available. I think that we can use that narrative to include the Atlantic City line for the long term. And I think the easiest way to do that is to show a map of the state of New Jersey and all of the arteries that run in the northern half of the state, and then show the southern half of the state and the bare, the bare area that is there. And I think this is a key piece to ensuring that doesn't reverse into the wrong direction for the long term.
Well, thank you, Bill. We are beyond out of time. There are just a couple of things that maybe we want to mention. There are more questions. We will get those questions to you with the person who asked so that you can respond directly. Again, I want to thank the sponsors. I think I see Jim Sylvester is on the line. So as a sponsor, Jim, if you had anything you wanted to mention to us, please do. We thank you for your support. If not, again, thank you to Dave Cownan from French and Perillo. There are some things coming up that maybe you want to make note of. Next month, we'll have John Berzicelli speak with us, again, virtually. In the month of March, Congressman Andy Kim will speak with us. And our first in-person outing will be a golf outing at the very last day of April. So thank you for that. And just for a little commercial, these programs are offered at no charge to our members, a small charge to non-members. If we have non-members on the line and you'd like to talk to us about getting a little more involved with the organization or with this particular committee, please don't hesitate to call us. Again, Assemblyman Moen, I'd like to talk to you offline if you're in your office. I have a couple of issues beyond these, so I'll give you a call a little later on. But if there's nothing else for the good of the order, then again, thank you all for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you next month with Assemblyman Berzacelli.
Thanks, Marlene.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Assemblyman.
Bill.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.